Hello, 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 everybody.
Welcome back to Columbus.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I think the first time I was in Columbus was, oh boy, I'm gonna date myself. Probably. All right, you ready for this? Now I have to think about this for a second. Almost 60 years ago, I was a very young guy in a tour of a company of Shakespearean actors from Catholic University in Washington, D.C., called National Players. Okay. And we were touring the country, doing one-night stands, playing high schools and colleges, all over the country, east of the Rockies. It was like an 8-month tour, 35,000 miles of literally doing the show at night and then packing up and the next day driving 200 miles to the next one, right?
Like in a bus or like
2 station wagons and a truck. 15 people, because we were the crew as well as the actors. Right. Yeah. And it was one of the great experiences of my life, and we played Columbus at one point. And I was here that long ago, and it was just, it was like a cow town. I'm kidding. Right? No. And I can't remember whether we played the university or not. We obviously played a school here at some point. and it was probably a Catholic high school where the nuns would come out and say, oh, you're going to be so excited because we just waxed the floor. And we're doing duels, right? So any slip, and it's dangerous. So we would say, oh, thank you very much. And then as soon as they left, we would take a bottle of Coca-Cola, and we'd sprinkle it all over the floor or sand or something, and just rough the floor up. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but it just occurred to me that I've been to a lot of places in my life, especially in this country.
That's awesome. I love traveling. Do you get a chance to, besides going out in the convention world, do you get a chance to go out and travel at all?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that travel is one of the great things in life, and that it is such an educator. If you're young, travel if you can, particularly if you have a chance to go to a foreign country that's safe, because once you get a chance to meet people from other places, they don't seem like foreigners anymore, because you understand, you get much more of a sense of what we all have in common in life. And that is, we all want to be safe, we want to be fed, we want to be sheltered, and we want to enjoy our lives in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely. The last time we were here together on stage, we were also, of course, joined by the great Ken Paige.
Yes.
You obviously got to spend a lot of time traveling with him, for many years.
Yeah.
I mean, could you tell us a little bit about what it was like to be blessed with his presence?
Well, first of all, I never worked with Ken. He and I were never in the studio at the same time, which was not an uncommon practice during Nightmare, and it's often the case with most animated voice acting jobs, is that you're usually in the studio by yourself. And so the great blessing was that I got to know him during these Comic-Cons, which we both enjoyed, and we would have a great time. And then whenever there was any off time, we'd sit and talk. And as it turns out, Ken was a friend of my wife, Joanna Gleason, who's a stage and film actress and also a director and a writer. She was the original Baker's wife in Into the Woods, the original production of Into the Woods. Tony winner, right? And she and Ken did a show together called, I can't remember the name of it at any rate. So I knew him a little bit, but to get to know this giant of a man, both physically and just in terms of his personality, he was extraordinary. I do a podcast called Cooking by Heart, where I talk to people about growing up around food, and some of the stories, the great stories that Ken told. I did a live show with Ken, and some of the stories he told about growing up with his aunts and his grandmother. If you get a chance, my website is chrissarandon.com, Cooking by Heart with Ken Paige. The stories are just classic and wonderful. And he was a real kind of, oh, and also Ken was, as you probably know, those of you who are obviously the fans of Nightmare Before Christmas, Ken was a great singer, but he also did a great cabaret show. He was in the original production of Cats, in which he played, do you remember which cat?
Oh my gosh, I could have told you like 2 seconds ago before you told me,
right.
before you asked me.
So, a little Sondheimer's here, yes, right. And he was just an extraordinary human being.
Something I want to talk to you about that that we've never really talked about, and that is going all the way back to Dog Day Afternoon. You were nominated for an Academy Award. How difficult is it when you are fresh into the industry and you get nominated for an award and you're being told, hey, you're going to be the next big thing? How hard is it for you to stay grounded and not get that big head and walk around and, peacock about?
Well, it just so happens I have a story related to that because at the time I was primarily a theater actor. I worked in, I told you about this company that I was in, this starting out when I was in graduate school. And then I got my first job in a repertory company in New Haven, Connecticut. And then I got a soap opera soon after that. I was on the soap for a little while. And then I got a Broadway show. And I was doing mostly theater. I was traveling around the country doing regional theater. And then I was in a couple of Broadway musicals. And so I was, my career goals were to have a career, not to be famous. And so when it happened, I thought, oh, okay, this is great, but I don't want to take it too seriously. So my ex, the wife, the woman that I was married to at the time, whose name is Susan Sarandon, and she and I were separated at the time, but she said to me, you better take me to the Oscars. So we went to the Oscars together, and the studio wanted to send us a limousine, and they sent the limousine and the driver, but we had already rented a car, a little Nash Rambler. I don't know if you remember those cars, anybody here who's a car person. Anyway, it looked like a little Pillsbury donut, right? So we decided we wanted the driver, but we didn't want the limousine. We wanted him to drive us there in the car. So we're working really hard not to take this seriously, going to the Academy Awards, going to the Oscars. So we get in the car and we arrive at the I think at the time it was the Chandler Pavilion in Los Angeles, and we get out of the car, and all of a sudden there's this screaming. There's a grandstand there, and there are people screaming, "Chris, Chris!" And I'm kind of going, well, oh, okay, this is what it's like to be like a movie star, I guess. And we're walking along, and then there's a guy up on a platform. His name was Army Archer. He worked for Variety magazine, and he would interview. It was kind of the version of the red carpet that you see on television now, where he would interview people as they came out of their cars onto the red carpet, right? So, oh, there's Chris Sarandon, who's just been nominated for an Oscar for his work in Dog Day Afternoon. Chris, come on up and let's talk. So I get up and I start talking to Army Archer, and I'm really kind of, getting kind of, oh, this is a movie star. This is happening for me, and I'm hearing, Chris, 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 with screaming people, right? And we're talking, and they're still screaming, and then suddenly I realized they're not saying my name anymore. They're saying the name of the next person down at the bottom of the steps going up. And I thought, that's how quickly it can change. And that was the best lesson I ever was given for the temptation to take it all too seriously and to take yourself too seriously, other than, I'm an actor. That's what I do. It's not that I am a movie star first and then an actor. I'm an actor first. And it also helps in terms of your ego, because I'll tell another quick story. When one of my daughters, Alexis, was, I think, 5 years old, and she was in kindergarten, and she and a friend were with the friend's mother, and they were talking about, their parents and what their parents did. And the woman who was the mother of the other child said to her daughter, "You know what Daddy does, don't you?" And the little girl said, "Yeah, he makes wires in houses." And then she said, that's right, Daddy's an electrician. She turned to my daughter and she said, you know what your daddy does, don't you? And she said, yeah, he looks for work. But that was my experience in the long term. And no matter, with a few exceptions, okay, the Tom Cruises of this world, the Al Pacinos of this world, I'm trying to think of the women but it's harder for women as they get older. The men can get older in the movie business. It's much harder for women. At any rate, the people who have longevity careers and who have been in big hit movies, that's the key, and who have done it over a period of time. With the exception of them, everybody else, no matter how famous they are, the people you are fans of, they're all looking for work all the time. And it's humbling. And at the same time, it keeps you grounded. If you're, unless you take it too seriously. Right. There are times when you have to go to work and you do stuff that you don't want to do, which I've done. I call them mortgage movies. But generally speaking, if you're lucky enough to have continued working and have things that are indelible in some way, which I've been fortunate enough to have 3 or 4 of them, then, that's gravy. That and the fact that I have a wonderful home life. I have 9 grandchildren. I'm a pig in poop, pardon the expression.
I have a couple more questions, but if you guys want to start lining up, if you guys have questions, you say, as you mentioned, you do have a couple of those movies, and it's everybody's dream to be able to have that one role that people always remember you for, and you have a couple of those.
Yeah.
And I feel like several of those roles people are always looking to make sequels. When's the Nightmare Before Christmas sequel? When is the Princess Bride sequel? Was there ever? What are your thoughts on the love for those that want to see a sequel, but at the same time keep the preservation of the original?
I think we all have the kind of feeling. I don't know about you guys, but that I do. That if you've seen the perfect movie, and it's perfect in your mind, and it's memorable, that maybe the idea of having something follow it up as a number 2 or a sequel or a prequel or whatever, it kind of dilutes the experience that you had with the original. That's the way I feel. I think Tim Burton feels that way, but we can have that discussion. And William Goldman as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That's an interesting thing as well.
Now, you've had a successful career in theater, television, movies, voice acting with Jack Skellington. Do you have a preferred medium of entertainment?
Watching it.
Watch.
That's my preferred medium. I love watching old movies particularly, but as far as mine, no. That's like my children.
I get that.
Ask me if I have a favorite kid. At least in private, you can.
Would you like to?
I don't.
Would you like to take some questions for our audience?
Absolutely.
Here? Hello. What's your name? Here, just pull it like it's a bicycle brake. There we go.
Okay. Okay.
Ooh, I never would have been able to do that. What's your name?
Brendan.
Hey, Brendan.
Hey, I met you earlier today.
Yeah, remember.
Yeah, but anyways, I wanted to know, how did you get the role of Jack Skellington, and did you have a favorite line from Jack Skellington?
I auditioned. Daddy looks for work. The call went out to my agent, my voiceover agent, and that they were casting for the speaking voice of Jack Skellington. I had no idea about it at all, other than it was a Tim Burton, it originated with Tim. Yeah. And I went in, and luckily, Danny Elfman had already done the songs, and they had animated a few of the songs. So I got to see an early version of the animation of Danny's songs. So I had it in my ear, because obviously what they were looking for was also a voice that was compatible with Danny's singing voice. Because hopefully, and I think that's the experience that most people have, is that you can't really tell the difference between when Jack speaks and when Danny sings. or when I speak and when Danny sings. You know, a couple of days later, I heard that they had cast me. I mean, I went and read the lines from the movie, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the casting process. Kind of
Okay.
boring, but that's the way it is sometimes.
Were you happy or disappointed that you weren't the singing voice?
Kind of disappointed, even
Okay.
though I think that Danny's work in the movie is unbelievable. His singing is great. The songs are great. So I can't imagine that I would have done it any better. But I think there's something in every actor that says, oh, I could do that, you know, whether you can or not. You have to feel that way in order to keep, you know, maintain your confidence. Otherwise, you looking for work, you get beaten down after a while. Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, what's your name?
Hello, my name is Ricky, and my question actually kind of relates to the previous one. It's regarding you being the speaking voice of Jack and Danny as the singing voice. During the audition process, at any point in time, were you maybe asked to provide a singing voice, or was it just decided early on, okay, Danny will be the singing voice, and we're just looking for the speaking voice? Like, can you provide insight?
Well, in order for that to work, it would have meant that they would have had to take Danny's voice out, his track, out of the music, and have somebody else sing it, syncing to the actual already produced version of the song, because they had already animated the song, right? Which is really hard, particularly with singing. It's somewhat easier with speaking that you can go back in later. I did, in fact, go back with Tim Burton after we had completed all of Jack's speaking lines, and they had animated them. Then Tim Burton and I went back in the studio. Tim didn't direct the movie. I think everybody knows that. It was Henry Selick. Henry Selick, who directed Coraline and James and the Giant Peach, and who's a stop-motion expert. I think it was obvious to Tim that he needed to get the best stop-motion animator to direct the movie, which he did. But to actually go back and do it that way for the singing is almost impossible. When you're doing movies and you're doing movie musicals, the singing comes first. And even if they use somebody else's voice to sing, they do that first, and then the actor who's playing the role lip syncs the song. So does that make sense that it would be harder to do it that way? So they had already animated Danny singing the songs in his voice. So it was just a matter of trying to match a speaking voice to Danny's singing voice.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey,
Hi.
Hello, what's your name?
my name's Evan.
Hi, Evan.
I actually came here back in December of 2023 when you had a panel with Ken and Paige. And my question actually relates to that. Do you think that at the Nightmare Before Christmas franchise won't be the same without him?
Will it be the same without him? Will what be the same without him?
The franchise, I guess
Oh.
the continuation of.
Yeah, because he brought the voice of Boogie Boogie.
Oh, yeah. First of all, I don't think there's any need for his voice again. I mean, they may figure out some way to use AI to.
I would not like that.
No, nor would I. But you know, it depends on what the. This is a very sort of nebulous ground right now in terms of what can be done with AI and what's morally, you know, acceptable in terms of replacing human beings with something that isn't human. So I don't know the answer, except that as far as I know, if this question is somebody's going to ask it, I'm sorry. But I think that Tim Burton has said repeatedly there's not going to be a sequel.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, what's your name?
Hello. Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
My question is when Jack goes to Christmas Town and he comes back and he's singing about how he knows like all the Christmas songs and everything, how did he not know who Santa Claus was if he knows all the Christmas songs by heart?
You're asking me? I mean, I played Jack. I am not Jack. I don't know. It's an interesting question that probably you should have asked. Who wrote it? Was it Denise Denovi? Who wrote the actual screenplay? I'm asking you,
You're
right?
asking- right.
Forgive me, but anyway, whoever wrote the screenplay, you should ask them and Henry Selick, and that's actually that would have been a good question. We did a panel at can't remember the con. It's online with Ken Paige, me, one of the producers, Kathleen. I've forgotten Kathleen's name. Unfortunately, it's been a long time, and another one of the creative producers, and this would have been a question for them. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, my name is Emily.
Hi, Emily.
And I just want to say Nightmare Before Christmas is my favorite Disney movie that most people don't even realize it's Disney, which baffles me.
It wasn't originally.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No.
How about this for a fact? Danny Elfman tells the story that on the first screening of the almost finished version, they showed it to the Disney executives. And Danny was there. And he said he got on an elevator and with the Disney executives, and for some reason, they didn't clock that he was Danny Elfman. And they started talking about it, and they kept going, how the hell are we going to sell this movie? Nobody's got, the children are going to be terrified by it. What are we going to do? We can't, this is terrible. I mean, not the movie's not terrible, but we can't, there's no way to market this movie for children. Interesting, yes? And so they didn't release it under the Disney banner originally. It was under Touchstone, which was a subsidiary of Disney, so that it wouldn't be perceived as being part of the Disney brand.
Wow.
And look what happened.
Thank goodness. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a phenomenal movie. But my main question
Yeah.
was, like, did you practice the songs just in case they did ask you to sing them? And when you're feeling silly at home with your grandkids, do you
No.
chase them around singing all the...
No. That part of it is kind of, I've gone. I've done, I do sing. I've done Broadway musicals. I've done 4 Broadway musicals, actually. Certainly I do, I'll sing along with stuff on the radio and what have you, but never with Nightmare, because Danny's songs now to me are just indelible.
Wow. Well, it's very lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, what's your name?
Hayes.
Hi, Hayes.
Hi. First of all, I think the screenplay was Caroline Thompson.
You're right. You're right.
But I like Nightmare Before Christmas. But I wrote out my question.
Obviously, yes.
But I grew up with the movie, and it's like very close to my heart. And I want to know, what is something, like, next time we watch Nightmare Before Christmas that we should take away from it?
Well, to me, the thing that spiritually connects to people, and the reason why, to me, other than the great artistry of the movie, which is extraordinary, I think, the visual element of the movie is just, it's incredible. Every time I watch it, and I know that probably a lot of you have watched it a lot more times than I have, I always discover something new. But there's something about Jack's journey, I think, that just reaches people. And it's about trying to discover his authentic self. And I think we all have that in us of how do I live my life finding that about myself. Who am I supposed to be?
Yeah.
And whether we're happy in our work, or whether we're a student and we're trying to figure out what we want to be going forward, or we're a kid trying to figure out who we are, which we all go through, especially during our teenage years. It's that journey that I think is the thing that sort of has held people for so long. You know, it's a combination of all the stuff that's, you know, the movie itself, the music, which is extraordinary. But it's a lot of about, it's one of the reasons why people say, what's your favorite expression? What's your favorite line from the movie? And I always say, it's Eureka. Because Eureka is about, oh my God, I discovered something. I discovered something new about myself, about the world, about Sally, about whatever it is that Jack is expressing.
Yeah.
And the other characters to a certain extent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, what's your name?
Hello, my name is Peyton, and I wanted to ask, what's your favorite scene from the movie you loved recording?
Favorite scene that I loved recording? What do you guys think? What do you think my favorite? I'm not asking you. I'm wondering, anybody have any thoughts about that? Yeah. Scientific method. Yeah. Yeah. It's a very cool scene. By the way, I have that board. I have that chalkboard. Yeah, one of the producers gave it to me. I can't think of a favorite because there were so many, but I do know that I loved shouting Eureka. Thank you.
Thank you, Peyton.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Josh.
Hi, Josh.
How often do you hear "To the Pain"?
He's talking about The Princess Bride. You guys remember that movie? I actually don't hear it as much as I do some of the other lines, but to the pain. Well, how often do I hear it personally?
Yes.
Oh, well, if my wife is really pissed off at me. Just kidding. Just kidding. Don't take that home and quote me. There are so many lines in that movie, and it's a testament to William Goldman, who wrote the screenplay, who was an Academy Award-winning screenwriter before The Princess Bride ever occurred, and who, despite the fact that he wrote Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and Marathon Man and, you know, a bunch of great movies, his favorite movie always was The Princess Bride.
Is a legend.
Yeah, and it was because one day he literally he had two daughters. William Goldman's no longer with us. He walked into the room and he said, "All right, I'm going to write something for you guys. What should it be about?" And one of the girls said, "A princess," and the other one said, "A bride." And so he said, "Okay," and he first wrote the book. And if you guys have a chance to read the book, because the book is actually much darker than the movie. But it's still great. I mean, it's still the spine of the story is there. Actually, I have a story about that. I was on my way to meet with Rob Reiner, the director, and William Goldman, the writer, to audition, again, looking for work. And I was on a bus heading up Central Park West from wherever I was living at the time, and I'm reading the paper about how the New York Knicks, if there are any Pacers fans out there, I'm sorry, but that the New York Knicks had drafted this one guy, and I was just aflame about it. I just thought it was a big mistake. This was a long time ago, right? This was in the 80s. And so I get off the bus, and I go up to this apartment where William Goldman lived. And he and Rob Reiner are sitting there, and I walk into the room, and they say, hi, how are you? We understand you're here to audition for Prince Humperdinck. How are you? And I said, well, the Knicks drafted Kenny Walker. And I'm sorry, but I just can't get it out of my head. Do you mind if and William Goldman, for some reason, it turns out, was a big New York Knicks fan, right? And so he went, "Oh, God, yes. Can you imagine?" And he and I started in on this draft pick that the Knicks made, and we're just going at it, you know, like just pitching. We just threw the Knicks into the toilet, right? We were so pissed off. And finally, Rob Reiner goes, "Guys, excuse me? You think maybe we could read, Chris?" And I went, oh, yes, I'm sorry, forgive me, okay. And so I read the scene, and it's the scene with, those of you who know the movie, Prince Humperdinck, Princess Buttercup threatens to commit suicide, right? And essentially, he talks her out of it by saying, I hope you'll accept me as an alternative to suicide, which is... And when I finished saying the line, Rob Reiner cracked up. He was just beside himself. And my first reaction was, how dare you? I just did this very serious moment in the script, and you and then I went, boy, God. Of course, the whole key to the movie is that comedy is serious business. If you let the audience know that you're being funny, then it's not as funny. That as long as you carry through the conventions of the movie, which was that these are real people operating in their time, and that they take their business very seriously. Let the lines do the work. Let the writing do the work, not the comic actors, with one exception, Billy Crystal. Who improvised pretty much that entire scene. I mean, he used the sort of spine of the scene, but he improvised pretty much the whole thing. But basically, the rest of it was just the script, the original William Goldman script, with those great lines. You know, I got my wife to murder, Gilder to frame for it, I'm swamped. Come on. Yeah. There were so many, and also the mixture of romanticism, because it's a very romantic movie, I think, right? But it's also a very cynical movie, which was kind of the way William Goldman wrote it, right? That when somebody says to Wesley, it's not fair, he says, life's not fair. If anybody who tells you different, he's selling something. That's a really cynical statement. But at the same time, the greatest kiss in the history of the world, all that stuff, it's so perfect. It's such a great movie.
Oh, it has been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you
very
very
much.
Thank you.
Hi, what's your name?
Hello, I'm Megan.
Hi.
I was wondering, what was it like working with Andre the Giant? What was it like?
He was, first of all, there's no way to describe what the experience was like the first time you met Andre the Giant, right? Because his hand was as big as this. His hand was as big as two hands, so that when you shook his hand, your hand disappeared into his hands, right? He was 7'6", somewhere around in there, 7 feet 6 inches, over 400 pounds. But he was also, he had a kind of, I have a story. You want to hear a story about Andre?
Yeah.
All right. So when I was cast in the movie, and the first part of the movie was shot in the Midlands of England, and so not a great place for little children, and I had two small daughters at the time, 3 and 1.5, or 3.5 and 2, anyway. And so they weren't coming with me for the first 6-8 weeks, and then they were coming to London, where we were going to shoot in the studio after that, and we were going to spend time together. So I wanted to explain to them why Daddy was going to be gone. He wasn't looking for work, he'd found work. And that I was going to be by myself, but then they were going to come and visit. And this is a movie that's going to be about, a princess. And I expected both my daughters to go, oh, a princess, Daddy. Well, no, nothing, right? So then I started describing some of the other characters and the sword fights, and then I said, and then there's a giant. And as soon as the word giant came out of my mouth, Daddy, there's a giant in the movie? How big is the giant? Is he as big as a house? Is he as big as a car? Is he really, really big? Does he pick you up and throw you across the room? Wait, and so the conversation then became only about Andre the Giant. Every time I would speak to my children on the phone from England, I'd say, hi, sweetie, it's Daddy. Hi, Daddy, where's the giant? Have you seen him yet? Is he as big as a house? Is he as big as a car? So, of course, when they arrived in England several weeks later, they were... I go to hug one of my children, and they immediately, Daddy, where's the giant? So I go to Andre, And I said, Andre, I'd love to bring the kids by someday when I'm not working and you are. Do you mind? He said, no, boss. That's okay. It's okay, boss. And so there was a day in the scene where they're in the forest, the Brute Squad.
Yeah, the Brute Squad.
Where they're rescuing Mandy Patinkin, where Andre is rescuing him. And they were working, and I'm not working, so I arrived with my ex-wife and the 2 kids. And Andre was in literally a boxcar because he couldn't fit in the makeup trailer, couldn't fit in the chair, couldn't fit, it was just too big. So I have to illustrate it in a way. So we arrive and we walk up the steps in the boxcar. I'm holding one of my daughters and my ex is holding the other. And we walk in and Andre's down and it's literally that distance, right? And he's sitting at a table. And so we walk and we go in, and both of my girls are like, and so then he gets up. And he got up. They start screaming at the top of their lungs, both of them. Now, those of you who have small girls in your families, you know that sort of the sound that almost makes you want to blow your brains out. Both of them screaming at the same time. So we immediately left because we couldn't stay there. They kept screaming, So we take them back to the car. And I go back because I have to apologize to Andre. I'm totally embarrassed. And I walk in and I said, Andre, I'm so sorry that the girls, great. And he went, that's okay, boss. They either run to me or run from me. That's how he had to live his life. He was at one time the most famous person in the world, right? And people either ran away when they saw him because they frightened by him, or they went to him like he was some kind of a talisman. He was a god of some kind. And people would, want to touch him. And he was okay with that, both of those things. And he didn't make a big deal out of it. And he also really liked the fact that when he was with us, he was just one of the guys and gals, he was just part of the team of actors doing this movie. And he was an extraordinary human being, really was. I mean, at one point during the shoot, the food was really terrible on the craft services on the shoot in Sheffield. And he had a break and he went back to France. He had a farm in France. And he came back with a truck filled with rare, fabulous cheeses and wines, and 'cause he was a gourmet, he was just an extraordinary guy. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, our last question. Hello, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
And first, I just want to thank you for your contribution to Jack. I'm a little obsessed with this character and have been for a very long time.
You're not alone.
I know, very aware. And that kind of relates to my question. I'm just curious, when you were recording, did you have any kind of inkling or sense of what a zeitgeist this would eventually become?
Not a clue. And if you told me that anybody else did, I probably would have, said, oh, come on. And not because I didn't think it was unique, because you could tell from the work and the work that I saw before I went in. When I saw some of the animation for the songs, I just thought, my God, this is unbelievable. But there's no way to know. There was no way to know The Princess Bride was going to be, what it became. You do the work, and then, it's up to you guys, really. It's up to the fans. It's up to people to discover things and pass the word along and make it what it is, which is why you guys are so important.
And can you tell us what Broadway musicals you're in? Because now you have me curious.
I was in the original production of a show called The Two Gentlemen of Verona. I replaced a guy named Raul Julia in that show. I was in a show called The Rothschilds, which was about the Rothschild family, the original production of that. I was one of the original brothers in that. I was in a show called Nick and Nora, where I met my wife, Joanna Gleason. That was the biggest flop in Broadway history. So I'm trying to remember the others. There's one other, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is our time. So before we go, if you could just take, I know 30 seconds is not enough time, but if you could take 30 seconds to let these folks know what it means to you for them to come out and share their experiences with Princess Bride, A Nightmare Before Christmas, and hear their stories.
There's no way to describe just how much you guys mean to us. I've come to understand this in the last few years, particularly when I'm not so active in my work and I'm doing more of this, and I get a chance to talk to people who talk about, a young woman who came up to me once and said, "My mother was a drug addict. Your voice put me to sleep every night." That is not a small thing. It's not a small thing to me. And your presence is felt everywhere. Those of us who do what we do we don't get to do what we do without you. I've lived a great life. It's not over, but I've lived a great life, and one of the great treasures of my life is getting a chance to talk to you guys. So please know that, because it never gets old.
Well, thank you, and thank all of you out there one more time. Please give it up for Chris Sarandon.